The estate was too quiet for a place that cost more than most cities. The kind of silence that pressed against the ears, thick and watchful, as if the walls themselves were listening. Lena moved carefully along the marble corridor, her soft shoes making no sound, a folded cloth in her hands. She had worked in rich houses before, but this one felt different. Colder, not because of the air conditioning, but because of what lived inside it. Since the day Veronica Hale moved in, the house had changed. Veronica was beautiful in a sharp, polished way. Always perfectly dressed, always smiling, and never warm. Her gaze slid over people like they were furniture, useful, replaceable. Lena had learned early not to meet her eyes for too long. The woman noticed everything, and what she noticed, she controlled. Lena, Veronica called from the foot of the stairs, her voice light, almost cheerful. Go to the garden shed and bring the small spade. And the gloves. Lena hesitated. The spade, ma'am, yes, quickly. I don't like repeating myself. Lena nodded and turned away. As she walked, she glanced toward the sitting room, where Noah usually spent his afternoons drawing or playing quietly with his toy cars. The room was empty. His backpack lay near the couch, half open. That was strange. Noah was never far from his things. He clung to them like anchors. Since his mother's death 2 years earlier, the boy had learned to stay out of the way. And since his father became engaged, he had learned to be invisible. Lena stepped outside into the back garden. The sky was heavy, low clouds hanging like a lid. The air smelled of damp earth. She crossed the manicured lawn, past rose bushes trimmed to perfection, toward the far edge of the property where the old oak stood. The shed was there, but so was something else. A patch of earth darker than the rest. Freshly turned, her steps slowed. A strange unease crawled up her spine. She told herself it was nothing. Garden work, landscaping. The estate staff often worked early, before dawn, to keep things pristine. Then she heard it. At first it was so faint she thought it was her imagination. A breath of sound, almost swallowed by the wind. She took another step. Help. Lena stopped so abruptly her heart stumbled. She held her breath, listening. The sound came again, clearer now. Thin, shaking. Please. A child's voice. Lena's hands began to tremble. She scanned the garden, her eyes darting to the hedges, the trees, the empty paths. No one else was there. Slowly, she walked toward the dark soil, each step heavier than the last. Noah, she whispered, barely daring to form the name. There was no answer, only a faint, desperate scratching sound. Like nails against wood, Lena dropped to her knees. She pressed her ear to the ground. The earth was cool, but beneath it she could hear muffled sobs, panicked breathing, frantic movement. Oh no, 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 no. Her fingers dug into the soil. The dirt came away easily, too easily, confirming her fear. This wasn't old work. This was recent. Her nails filled with mud as she clawed faster, her breath coming in sharp gasps. Beneath the dirt was wood, smooth, pale, unmistakable. A box, not large, child-sized. Help me, came the cry, louder now, breaking. I'm here, Lena sobbed. I'm here, sweetheart. She scraped the dirt away until she found the edge of the lid. There were scratches all over it, deep grooves where small fingers had fought for life. Lena's stomach twisted. She pried at the seam, her hands slipping, panic roaring in her ears. The lid shifted just enough to let air rush in. A small hand pushed upward from inside, weak, shaking. Noah, Lena whispered, tears streaming down her face. Hold on, please hold on. She forced the lid open further, until she could see his face, pale, streaked with dirt and tears. His lips were bluish, his eyes glassy with terror. She said it was a game, he gasped. She said Daddy would come. Rage unlike anything Lena had ever felt exploded inside her. But there was no time. Noah's head lolled against the side of the box. His breathing was shallow. Lena hooked her arms under his shoulders and pulled with everything she had. The box tipped, soil spilling in, but she didn't stop until Noah was free, limp in her arms. She pressed his face against her chest, rubbing his back, whispering prayers she hadn't spoken in years. I've got you. You're safe. I promise. I promise. That's when headlights swept across the garden. A car door slammed. Veronica's voice floated through the air, sharp and annoyed. Lena, what are you doing back here? Panic shot through Lena. She looked down at Noah, then back toward the path. Veronica's heels clicked closer. There was no time to explain. No time to argue. Lena stood, clutching Noah to her chest, and ran. She cut across the lawn, her breath tearing from her lungs, Noah's weight dragging at her arms. Behind her, Veronica shouted, angry now, shrill. Stop, put him down. Lena didn't look back. She burst through the side entrance, nearly colliding with a security guard. Her scream tore through the house like glass shattering. He's alive, she cried. She buried him. She buried the child. The house exploded into chaos. Voices shouted. Feet pounded. Someone took Noah from her arms, laying him on the floor, calling for an ambulance. From the doorway, Veronica stood frozen. The perfect smile was gone. Her face had drained of color, her eyes wide, calculating, trapped. Lena slid down the wall, shaking uncontrollably, her hands still covered in dirt and blood. She stared at them, barely aware of the world spinning around her. She had heard the quiet cry. And because she listened, a child was still breathing. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and quiet terror. Machines hummed softly, their steady rhythms a fragile promise that life was still winning. Noah lay in the bed, wrapped in white sheets that seemed too big for his small body, an oxygen mask resting gently over his nose. His chest rose and fell, shallow but steady. Each breath felt like a miracle. Richard Hale stood beside the bed, his hand wrapped around his son's fingers as if letting go might make him disappear. The billionaire who controlled markets with a single phone call now looked like a man who had lost all power. His tailored suit hung loosely on his shoulders, his eyes red, unfocused, haunted by a single image he could not escape, his child buried alive while he was signing contracts in another city. I should have been here, he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. I should have seen it. Lena stood near the door, unsure where she belonged. Her clothes had been replaced with hospital scrubs, her hands scrubbed raw until no dirt remained, but she could still feel the soil under her nails, could still hear Noah's cry echoing in her ears. Every time the monitor beeped, her heart jumped. A doctor stepped in quietly and spoke in a low voice. Noah would recover. He had suffered oxygen deprivation, shock, dehydration, but no permanent damage, thanks to how quickly he'd been found. Richard sank into the chair beside the bed, pressing his forehead to Noah's hand, tears finally breaking free. Outside the room, the truth was already tearing through the estate like fire. Security footage revealed everything. Veronica leading Noah toward the garden, her hand resting possessively on his shoulder. The boy hesitating, looking back at the house. Trusting her anyway. The camera near the oak tree had been disabled, but it didn't matter. Too many pieces fell into place. The police questioned Veronica in one of the estate's private offices. Gone was the elegant fiancée. Her hair was disheveled, her voice sharp with desperation as she tried to explain, to twist the story into something smaller, something forgivable. It was just to scare him, she insisted, her hands clenched. He was always watching me. Always in the way. I needed him to understand boundaries. The officers didn't react. They slid documents across the table instead. False passports, name changes, court records sealed in other countries. Men who had married or engaged her and lost fortunes shortly after. Shell companies that led back to accounts in her control. And one detail that sealed her fate, a revised will, prepared weeks earlier, transferring Noah's trust to Richard's future spouse in the event of an accidental death. Veronica's confidence shattered, her shoulders slumped, her voice cracked. He wasn't supposed to die, she said weakly. One officer stood. Attempted murder, he replied. And fraud. You're under arrest. The sound of the cuffs clicking closed echoed like a final verdict. By morning, the story was everywhere. Media vans lined the hospital entrance, reporters desperate for a glimpse of the billionaire, the fiancé, the maid who had heard a whisper in the dirt. Richard ordered silence. No statements. No interviews. Some things were too sacred to be consumed. He stayed by Noah's side for days, sleeping in a chair, refusing to leave. He read to him when the boy stirred, his voice breaking as he stumbled through familiar bedtime stories. When Noah finally opened his eyes fully, confused and afraid, Richard was there. Daddy, Noah whispered. I'm here, Richard said instantly, his voice thick. I'm not going anywhere, I promise. Noah's gaze shifted to the doorway, where Lena stood, trying to disappear. She saved me, he said softly. Richard turned and really looked at Lena for the first time, not as staff, not as part of the background, but as the woman who had reached into the earth and pulled his son back from death. Thank you, he said, standing. The words were too small for what he felt. I trusted the wrong person. You trusted your heart. Lena shook her head. I just heard him, she said. Anyone would have. No, Richard replied quietly. Not everyone listens. Weeks passed. Veronica's arrest turned into formal charges. The engagement vanished from records, her name scrubbed from the estate as if she had never existed. The oak tree was surrounded by tape at first, then quietly restored. Fresh soil, new grass, white flowers planted where horror had lived. Noah returned home thinner, quieter, but alive. He slept with the light on for a while. Sometimes he woke crying from dreams of darkness and tight spaces. Each time, someone came. Always. Lena stayed too. At first, she planned to leave. She told herself her job was done. But one evening, Richard asked her to join him in the study. Not as an employer calling staff, but as a man who needed to say something important. "I don't want you to go," he said simply. "Not as a maid." Lena stiffened. "Sir, I want you here as Noah's personal caretaker," he continued. "With full authority, education, security, and a trust of your own. For life." She stared at him, stunned. "I don't need money." "This isn't about money," Richard said. "It's about trust. My son trusts you. So do I." Lena's eyes filled with tears she hadn't allowed herself to shed since that day in the garden. She nodded, unable to speak. Life slowly found a new rhythm. Laughter returned to the halls. Noah began to draw again, pictures of trees, of the sun, of a woman with kind eyes and dirt-stained hands. The estate no longer felt cold. It felt awake. Sometimes, in the late afternoon, Lena walked past the oak tree. The flowers swayed gently in the breeze. No sound came from the ground now. Only birds, only wind. But Lena knew something most people forgot. The most dangerous truths don't announce themselves. They cry softly, and wait for someone brave enough to listen.